we are also focusing here on eradicating poverty.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and poverty, we have a lot of young men who are not employed.
Absolutely.
And then let's say, for instance, you've mentioned the issue of bringing machine.
Absolutely.
Now, we all know what machine can do. Machine reduces the number of employees in a company.
Okay.
So when these employees are reduced, now they're jobless. Where do they go to?
There must be costs.
But now my problem. My problem is here that just like you have mentioned, we are working here on how we can eradicate poverty, and that is why we are focusing on economic development.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So while we're focusing on the economic development, you brought something on the issue of private sectors.
Private sector. Absolutely.
Now, private sector. As good, let's say a lot of companies are there.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we have got public sector.
Yeah.
And now the public sector, what the number of people or the number of employees that are being employed by the public sector are very few. Let me just bring it. Yeah.
Come again.
Now the people that are being employed by the government.
Okay.
Let me use that word. The people that are being employed by the government. Let's say, for instance, there are around 1 million per year. And the people that graduate
I understand. It's a
are
challenge.
4 or 5 million per annum.
I know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I know the point.
Just what is about? I just wanted to explain about this.
All that thought. I'll come back to that.
Private sector demands
capital, money to start a business.
Yeah, money to start a business. Labor.
That's highly skilled. Mm-hmm. The term is highly skilled. It has to be very
not just
specific.
skilled.
Private sector is very specific. Mm-hmm. It demands highly skilled employees.
But don't you think that in private sector you must have the people that we call them casual or people who have got who are not skilled but they are there to help.
Absolutely. But remember this. Yeah. Our objective is to get rid of poverty within a span of one generation. Mm-hmm. And the economy has to grow by 7% at least 7%. Mm-hmm. Casuals are good, but will we hit the 7% per year? Will we get the 7% per year that we need for the economy to grow?
Let's say, for instance, let's calculate.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. For instance, you have you're working with you have got 100 skilled personnel, highly skilled.
Precisely.
And then maybe you're producing some. Let's say something like tissue. Let's start from there.
Tissue paper.
Yeah, tissue paper, or even water. Of course, this skilled personnel will be in different. And welcome back to Havana Media. My name is Boniface Owino, and as usual, I'm going to be your host for today. Now, I'm very glad this morning to host Mr. Dayton, and I'm going to give him time to at least tell us who he is before we start our conversation. Mr. Dayton, karibu sana.
Thank you, Boniface. Yes. And you have a lovely place.
Havana. Havana.
Yeah. Beautiful place. Mm-hmm. So my name is Dayton Mulinga. I come from Makueni County, from a place near Emali, along Mombasa Road. Okay. I have a bachelor's degree in economics from University of Nairobi, and I've worked in the financial industry in Kenya before I moved to Sweden. In Sweden, I earned my master's degree in financial mathematics from Uppsala University. For the past 10 years, I've been living in Sweden, working and running my own business. Part of the reason of coming to Kenya, one of the reasons, or the main reason of my return to Kenya, is driven by a deep desire to see my homeland prosper. Mm-hmm. I want to contribute to the economic development journey of this great nation. Mm-hmm. Why, you may ask? A big part of it is because of my background. I come from a portfolio management background, and in this area, macroeconomics is a big deal. And the framework we use to analyze these macroeconomics patterns and trends and come up with investment strategies is the same framework that is used in economic development. It's the same framework that developed nations use to foster the economic growth. Is the same framework that is recommended by all economics textbooks. I want to leverage this background in the economic development journey of this nation. That is why making a case to Kenyans, urge them to consider the vision I share, to embrace the vision I share, to embrace the vision, to unite around the vision, and together build a country that truly reflects the aspirations of the youth. Thank you.
So let me ask you this question. Why is this conversation of economic development very important to you?
I believe now more than ever, this topic of economic development is very essential.
Yeah.
Let me give you a story. Just bear with me. It will make sense by the end of the day.
It's fine.
And I'm a person who believes in the scripture, so I get a lot of, it shapes my kind of the way I view the world. Philip was preaching in Samaria. God spoke to him and told him to leave Samaria and go to the desert, to travel south to the desert. In the desert, he encountered a chariot which was carrying an Ethiopian eunuch. This Ethiopian eunuch was coming from pilgrimage in Jerusalem on his way to Ethiopia. He was reading aloud the book of Isaiah, I understand, the book of Isaiah. Philip came running to the chariot and asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" The eunuch said, "How can I understand unless I get someone to explain to me?" He invited Philip into the chariot. This simple invitation brought in entire transformation, not just in the life of this eunuch, but also in the Ethiopian landscape. Scholars, as we speak, they say that Christianity in Ethiopia was brought in by this man, this one man. The rich Christian text, which is found in Ethiopia, was brought in by this Ethiopian eunuch. That is the power of invitation. Power of understanding. You need someone to explain some of these things to you. It's the power of understanding. It equips you. It informs you. Don't forget that Kenya is a democracy. And democracy, it requires what? Active participation and informed citizens. I believe you would agree with me that we don't have issues with active participation. That one, we have checked that box. The issue we have is informed engagement, especially on the issues that affect us as the people of Kenya, especially the issues that affect us. We tend to focus more on petty issues. We leave out the main issues that affect us. Economic development is a topic that we can shy away from. We have to get it right. We can't allow the next 60 years of our nation turn out just to be like the last 60. We must get it right now. And I believe that's what's essential for this conversation, this moment.
Let me just put it this way. I think you are, I can now say that you are an economist. Yeah. Being an economist.
I think economist is more specific. Is it wide? I would say I'm a portfolio management consultant.
Okay.
I think that's better.
Portfolio management consultant.
Portfolio management consultant.
Okay. Now, being a portfolio management consultant, why you?
Why me?
Yeah.
I think, why us? Because it's not just me. I think there are many reasons why we are doing this. And one of them, remember the story of the crippled man at the pool of Bethesda. I know you know the story.
Yeah, I know
but just for the context, this is where all sick people within that community, they would gather once in a year. I think
to wait for water to start.
Precisely, the Spirit of God will come and start the water, and the first person to step in the water will be healed. So this crippled man was staying there for 38 years, waiting for his healing. We can say he missed 38 opportunities to get his healing.
For 38 years.
For 38 years. Yeah. So Jesus Christ shows up, and out of all the people in the pool, he goes straight to this man. He asked him. Jesus asked this guy, "Do you really want to get healed?" The man, the crippled man, was surprised. He replied back, "Sir, I have no one to help me. When the Spirit starts the water, everyone rushes in front of me." I want to listen to the reply he gives back. "I don't have anyone to help me." Christ told him, "Get up, pick up a mat, and go." Just like that, he got healed. He picked up his mat and took off. What happened in this case? Jesus spoke faith into this man's life. He spoke faith into his spirit. He got a new mindset. His attitude was like, I'm done sitting around waiting for someone to come and help me. I'm done sitting around in self-pity. Today, I shall arise.
Yeah.
I shall arise and step into my purpose. Just like Christ spoke faith into this guy, to this crippled man. For us, we want to speak faith to the Kenyan people, especially the youth. For them to realize that, to remind them that there's no one who is coming to save us.
That's true.
There's no one who is coming from outside to save us. The people we have been waiting for those 38 years, so to speak, for those 50 years, for those 60 years, the people we have been waiting for is actually us. It's us. We are the ones to save ourselves. Kenya will change. It's us who will change the Kenya.
Yeah.
It's us who will save ourselves. And the sooner we get up, pick up our mat, and be on our purpose, be on our way, the faster this country will change. So we believe, the question is, why us, why me?
Yeah.
We believe we have been raised up for such a time as this, and will not remain silent in the face of this tragedy which is taking place in our country.
Now that one gives me another question to ask you. That we've been in this economic dilemma for a very long time. Let me just say since 1963, because that is where all these things began.
Absolutely.
And right now, people have started knowing what needs to be done and what should not be done. So why do you think? Okay, why this time?
Why this time? Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
I think I'll ask you a question. When you look around, when you look at the political environment, when you look at the political climate, and the people who are, who want to vie for the top leadership, and also those in the government, whom will you trust with the future of your children?
Okay, politically, I can't trust these guys because they've been in politics for a very long time and they've done nothing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
For me, there's no one to trust with the future of our lives, for the future of our kids. There's no one. Simple. These guys are politicians. Politicians, the main objective of a politician is how to win the next election. That's why if they're not talking about Tano Tena or Kumi Bila Break. The other group is talking about coalitions, build a coalition to get rid of the current regime. Now, after getting rid of the current regime, what happens? A continuation of the same system. Leaders, they care less about elections, about winning elections, but more about the next generation. We want to provide that leadership, which is desperately required, needed in this country. We want to, replace the nightmare we have seen over the past few years with the kind of leadership that restores not only values, our values. I know you know our values are. It's a crazy situation we are facing. So a leadership that restores our values, but also places this country in a trajectory of prosperity. We have the formula. We have the formula for economic development. It's a formula that has been tried, tested, and found to be true. Rich nations use this formula to foster economic growth. Not even that. Countries in Africa, we are talking about Botswana, Mauritius, they have used the same formula and they have seen remarkable progress. If they can do that, I believe we can do that. That's why we are here.
Now, you've talked about a formula, by the way. And I think from my understanding, from the way you've spoken and what I've grabbed, is that you seem to have a formula of handling this thing. What is the formula like? Yeah.
The thing is, let me say it's not my formula. Let me say that. This, it's a framework that was put forward by the father of economics, the father of modern economics. That's Adam Smith. In his work, in his seminal work, The Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. What I've done, drawing from my extensive experience in portfolio management, is to distill this information and put it in a format that is easy to digest, easy to understand
Okay.
for any person in the streets. That's what I've done. For anyone who is looking for more information about this, I think it will always be good to buy the book, The Wealth of Nations by It's always good to buy the book. But here's the formula. Rich nations, for them to become rich, they don't become rich by chance. They use data. Data is the backbone, the foundation of economic development. Yeah. So what does the data say? As we speak, the current data, what does it say? Economists and the World Bank, as we speak, they are telling us, for us poor nations, Africa is a poor nation.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, we are poor.
We are poor nation. Yeah. For us poor nations, to eradicate poverty, to get rid of poverty within one generation, we need the economy to grow by at least 7% per year. We need the economy to grow by at least 7% per year. That's a magic number. But for this to work, you need the blood of the economy flowing. The private sector is the blood, the heartbeat, the life force of the economy. Even in the nations that give us foreign aid, that money they use to support other nations, that money comes from private sector through the taxes. So what does private sector really mean? When we say private sector, what does it mean? Can you explain to me?
Okay, a private sector, I think it's you can't put it like an NGO, we can't put it like that, but let's say that it's an independent body. Like it doesn't rely on the government support, something like that.
You're not far off. Private sector means any business that has employees in the range of 1 to 250. If you have a business, whatever that means, and the number of employees are within that range, 1 to 250, you are considered the private sector.
But you don't depend on government? Or you must depend on the government?
No, you don't depend.
Okay, so I was almost.
okay, almost there, but not there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as long as you have a business and the number of employees is in that range, between 1 and 250, you are considered the private sector. It doesn't matter when you are the only one running the business. It doesn't matter if you are employed and you have a side hustle which complements your income. You are considered the private sector, the very driving force of economic growth.
Okay.
So for all this to come together, the work of the government, when the private sector takes the center stage, the work of the government, the work of the public sector, the work of the government is two things. One, to provide public goods. What are public goods?
I'm not.
It's public goods. It means those services that are financed by our taxes. They're talking about education, healthcare, infrastructure, name it. That's one of the work of the government when private sector takes the center stage. The other one is to provide a conducive environment for the private sector to thrive. Why? Why is this important? Why do you need a good environment for the private sector to thrive? It attracts investments, whether local or foreign. If you have a good idea and the taxes, they support, they're friendly to business, why not take a chance? That's the work of the government, to provide public goods and create a good environment for the private sector to thrive.
Let me just ask a question.
Okay.
Let me ask a question there before we go.
Okay, absolutely.
In the issue of private and public sector.
Okay.
So it means that a country, if a country strategize themselves very well, a private sector can take much lead in or maybe in providing the things that are needed by the Kenyans or by the people. Let me not put in Kenyans because we've lived in different countries. So it means that private sector can play a very big role in people's lives more than the public sector.
When I say the private sector is the blood of the economy, what does that mean? Without blood, there's no life, right? Yeah. It's the blood, the life force of an economy, not just in Africa, but in developed nations. They use the private sector. If the environment is thriving, we'll have a private sector which is thriving. So private sector is the blood. Here in Kenya, it's the other way around. We focus more on the public sector. But I'll come back to that just as we progress. But now for this to come together, sorry, I think it's a long conversation. For this to come together, Private sector is very specific. It demands three things. Three things that private sector demands. It demands labor. Labor is just workforce.
Workforce, yeah.
Legal from 15 to 65 years of age. Labor, the two pillars that anchor labor is education and healthcare. Private sector demands highly skilled workforce.
Yeah.
Highly skilled, that's the word. It's very specific, private sector. At the same time, when it comes to healthcare, it demands highly, healthy people to work for the private sector.
Yeah.
That's on the labor. On the capital side, it demands capital. Capital is essentially money. Money to start or expand your business.
Yeah.
If you have a business, of course you need money.
You need money to do one or two.
Capital to be, whatever it is. It demands capital, which is money, essentially money. The more access you have to capital, the better place is your business. That's just capital. Then we have productivity. Productivity is just innovation, efficiency. And this metric alone, productivity, accounts for 60% as to why one nation outgrows another. Why Kenya in 1960s was at par with Singapore in terms of GDP. But now Singapore is five times that of Kenya. What's the cause? Productivity. This is a key metric when it comes to private sector. So these three metrics, labor, capital, and productivity, are the cornerstones of economic development. The pillars that guarantee eradication of poverty, at the same time promise true prosperity. That's the template. That's the framework that is used by developed nations. Yeah.
But in that, what are the key components? There must be some key components.
We talked about the capital, the labor, and the productivity. Those are the three pillars. Those are the main elements that private sector demands.
So private sector demands
capital, money to start a business.
Yeah, money to start a business.
Labor. That's highly skilled. The term is highly skilled. It has to be very
not just
specific.
skilled.
Private sector is very specific. It demands highly skilled employees.
But don't you think that in private sector you must have the people that we call them casual or people who have got who are not skilled but they are there to help.
Absolutely. But remember this. Our objective is to get rid of poverty within a span of one generation. And the economy has to grow by 7% per year, at least 7%. Casuals are good, but will we hit the 7% per year? Will we get the 7% per year that we need for the economy to grow?
Let's say, for instance, let's calculate.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. For instance, you have you're working with you have got 100 skilled personnel, highly skilled.
Precisely.
And then maybe you're producing some. Let's say something like tissue. Let's start from there.
Tissue paper.
Yeah, tissue paper, or even water. Of course, this skilled personnel will be in different. You'll allocate them in different areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need support, of course. Support.
Now, these guys, these 100 people cannot, and then maybe you want at the end of the day, 10,000 or 20,000 tissue paper to be produced. Now, who will and then packed? Do you think these skilled people will do the production and then do all the process and then pack?
I think I still come back to the three metrics of the three cornerstones of economic development. We talked about productivity. Productivity is innovation and efficiency. It's okay, you can have casuals, but we can do better. You can use technology, right? That's where productivity comes in. If one person is producing 10 pieces of tissue paper, what does that mean when you take a machine to do the same? Maybe it might give you 1,000 within an hour, So productivity is where the focus should be.
But we are also focusing here on eradicating poverty.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and poverty, we have a lot of young men who are not employed.
Absolutely.
And then let's say, for instance, you've mentioned the issue of bringing machine. Now, we all know what machine can do. Machine reduces the number of employees in a company.
Okay.
So when these employees are reduced, now they're jobless. Where do they go?
Thing is, for us to achieve 7% per year economic growth, we can have any growth. You can even have -1. You can even have 2%. But for us to achieve 7% per year, there'll be some pain. we must focus on productivity. There must be some costs. There must be some. We can always train people, you know. They might be, maybe they don't have some skills. We might equip them with maybe the latest skills to become better in other, you know, in other productions. You can't grow the economy without skills. Private sector is very specific. It needs skills. If you don't have skills, equip yourself. There must be costs.
But no, you know, my problem is here that just like you have mentioned, we are working here on how we can eradicate poverty, and that is why we are focusing on economic development.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So while we're focusing on the economic development, you brought something on the issue of private sectors.
Private sector, absolutely.
Now, private sector has got, let's say there are a lot of companies are there.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we have got public sector.
Yeah.
And now the public sector, now what the number of people or the number of employees that are being employed by the public sector are very few. Let me just bring it. Yeah.
Come again.
Now the people that are being employed by the government.
Okay.
Let me use that word. The people that are being employed by the government. Let's say, for instance, there are around 1 million per year. And the people that graduate
I understand. It's a
are
challenge.
4 or 5 million per annum.
I know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I know the point.
Just what is about? I just wanted to explain about this.
All that thought. I'll come back to that. I know what you mean.
Okay.
All that thought. I'll come back to that. Yeah, I'll come back to that. Absolutely. I'll come back to that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what is you have what is the way? Because I've seen a lot of people. I've done interviews with different people. You know, some people who have the same idea of develop or maybe changing the economy of the country. But now, what is the formula that we're going to use different?
Can we? Let me just talk about the global trends that are taking place.
Yeah.
Then we'll revisit on the solutions going forward.
Okay, yeah.
So it comes to the global trends, the trends that are taking shape right now. The silent forces that are shaping not just Africa, not just Kenya, but globally.
Globally, yeah.
We have few forces. When we look at these three metrics, the metric that demands maximum attention, especially in the African context, not just in Kenya, because we're in the same kind of class. The metric that demands maximum attention is the issue of labor. We sort of know there's a challenge there, but we don't understand the gravity of the issue. Labor is a challenge. When you talk about the education side, you say labor demands. When you talk about the labor on the education side, we said private sector demands highly skilled, technical guys. But there's a report which is done by OECD, that's the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, called the Program for International Students Association Assessment. It's a program that evaluates the quality of students graduated from 4 when it comes to mathematics. That's the mathematics, performance, and reading. That report, it shows that within Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa, only 3 out of 10 students who graduate from high school, from 4, meet that minimum proficiency level in mathematics.
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10. What is minimum proficiency level in mathematics? That is think of it as the SI unit of measuring mathematics knowledge. Basic concepts like, you see basic concepts of mathematics to apply in real life. Only 3 out of 10 meet that class.
So it means that 7 out of these 10.
That's the thing.
Maybe our average, or
that's even in Africa. That's Africa. In Kenya, it's the same thing. 7 out of 10 students who graduate from high school, they don't meet that threshold, and it has been a decline from I think the last 10 years. A decline. Compare this with the global acceptable level of 7.5%. That means for out of 10 students who graduate from high school, 7.5 should meet this threshold. In Kenya, it's only 3%.
So the other way around, it's 7 are expected.
The standards, the global standards.
Yeah, 7.
7 out of 10.
Let's say that maybe these 3 will.
In a class of 10, 7 must meet that threshold. to have an economic development, to hit that 7% economic growth. For us, it's 3%. We're talking about mathematics here. Only 3%.
Yeah.
Only 3 out of 10 meet that threshold. The question is, why do we have to focus on mathematics? Why mathematics? Why not English? Why not Swahili? Why mathematics? If you believe in economics, the idea that countries that are involved in agriculture, think of African nations, usually find themselves in the category of low-income economies. Do you know why?
No.
That's the nature of commodities, agriculture's commodities. It's not just agriculture, but also oil, just name it, precious metals. Commodities are highly volatile. Their prices, they change sudden, and you just need a sudden change in price like this to wipe an entire economy, or to consider 65% of the African workforce is employed in the agricultural sector. Yeah. So a slight decline like this, it means mass job loss. That's poverty right there. Yeah. That's why countries that are involved in agriculture usually find themselves in the low income category. Then we have other countries like China that are involved in industry and manufacturing. They usually fall in the class of middle income category. Then we have other countries that are involved in service industry. We are talking about finance, banking, retail, Walmart, and all those kind of things, transport, whatever it is. Those countries, they usually fall in the category of high income economies. Think of the West, developed nations. For these nations, for these service industry economies, for these developed nations, to be competitive and maintain, remain competitive over long term, they take the lead in science and technology, innovation and development, with mathematics, with maths being the catalyst.
So
maths is the foundation.
So in economic maths
is the foundation.
But why then were they suggesting that mathematics should
I'll come to that.
Yeah.
Maths is a must for you to move your economy to hit that 7% economic growth. That's on quality. When you look at the quantity now, just stay there. I'm not. Maths is the foundation, right? Stay there. When you look on the quantity side, when it comes to population growth, according to the latest reports from UN, they project that in the next 25 years, the global population will hit the 10 billion mark, with 25% of this population living in Africa. That is 2.5 billion people. As we speak, we are 1.4 billion people in Africa. That means in the next 25 years, we'll see an increase of 1.something billion in the African. In Africa. We are talking about 1.something billion in Africa. And majority of these people will be 17, 18, 19 years. Now here's the case. 70% of them, we talked about 3 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
So that means 7 out of 10 cannot do mathematics.
Cannot do mathematics.
In the workforce. 70% of the population cannot do mathematics. That means, what are the implications here? It means we will not be able, it would be almost impossible to move our country, transition our economy from agriculture to service industry, where mathematics is the foundation. It will almost be impossible to transition. So that leaves us with what? Agriculture and industry and manufacturing. But for those who will find themselves working in the industries, for those who will be in the industry and manufacturing, it will be difficult to compete. Why? China, over the last 15 years, has taken over this domain. This is their domain, industries and manufacturing. That means we are tied in agriculture. Low-income continent. Now I want you to picture this. 2.5 billion people living in Africa, a low-income continent. Right now it's 1.4 billion people. Think of 2.5 billion people living in Africa, a country where agriculture is a continent where agriculture is the main driver of economic growth, where 65% of the population is employed in the agriculture. What will the quality of life be for these 2.5 billion people? Do you see what I'm saying?
Now I'm seeing it.
What will be the quality of life for these people? Will it be the same story of diseases, poverty, what are the African governments, including Kenya, what are they doing to prepare for this looming reality? I think a better question is, what will these 2.5 billion people, what will these 2.5 billion people contribute to the global community? What will they do? And she's another case. I think this now it gets extreme. Major cities in Africa, we are talking about Lagos, Cairo, Kinshasa, Addis, Nairobi, and Cape Town, will see their population double.
So the
Nairobi right now population is 5 million.
Yeah.
I think it's 5.1 million.
5.1 million. Yeah.
In the next 2 decades, and that's not far. You know, the first lot of Kibaki, you know, the free education, the first lot, right now they are 22 years, 23 years. It's not far.
Yeah.
The next 25 years is not far. Nairobi, that population will double to 10 million people.
So you can imagine Nairobi.
What are we doing as a government, you know, as policymakers? What exactly are we doing to address the critical issues like agriculture, like healthcare, like education, infrastructure? What exactly are we doing? That's the issue we have when it comes to labor. On the education side, mathematics is critical here for us to transition from agriculture to service industry. It's critical. Let's go to healthcare. I know you have some points. Maybe we'll come back to that, because when I'm providing the solutions, I'll touch on the questions about, you know.
It's okay.
Let's talk about healthcare. Healthcare is a pillar under labor. Private sector demands healthy. You have to be healthy.
Yeah, you have to be healthy
to work. That's the thing. You know, private sector is about companies.
Yeah.
For you to come to work, you must be good. Otherwise, productivity will be affected.
Yeah, will be affected. Yeah, that's true.
But now, when you look at the quality side of it, there's a report which was done by African Development Bank, which revealed that in Africa, only 35% of the healthcare facilities meet the minimum standards of quality care. The minimum standards of quality care. What are these minimum standards? These are the baseline services each healthcare must provide. Otherwise, you're not a exactly. You're not supposed to be there. The baseline services. This includes presence of highly trained doctors, availability of essential medicine, you know, equipment, all those things. The foundation of medical, you know, the foundation of Medicare. Yeah. When you look on the quantity side, the terms of numbers, we've said that population will be 10 billion.
Yeah, 10 billion.
25% in Africa.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, right now it's, we talked about...
1.4 billion?
Yeah. So that means in the next 25 years, with that 5% of healthcare facilities, not, you know, just that, that's 75% of facilities which are do not meet the minimum standards for quality care. What will these 2.5 billion people do with this? Does it make sense?
Why?
And if what we are seeing isn't there to go by, we are not going to see any major changes with this 35%. It might be that 5% in the next 2 decades, which means private sector will be affected because of overcrowding. People will be missing job because they can't, you know. What happens when people miss, they are not getting, they're not accessing healthcare. They go to work with untreated healthcare conditions, right? Which over time might become chronic. Does it make sense? What happens with the insurance companies? They hike their health premium insurances in anticipation of these unchecked conditions. Things like TB, high blood pressure, you know, they're in that class, which requires long-term management. Companies that operate in dysfunctional healthcare systems, they experience not only high costs due to health expenses, but also productivity is an issue because people are calling sick, can't come and work. So this financial burden blocks foreign investments coming to the country. You know, like we have like global giants like Unilever. I think this is a report which was done in Harvard Business Review 2020, which showed that they are more willing to invest 40% of their investments in countries that have proper healthcare services than those countries without. So healthcare healthcare system is critical for the private sector. Investing in healthcare system is not about the well-being of the population. I know that sounds harsh. It's not about your well-being. It's a strategic economic decision that helps to lower the cost of operation for the businesses. We must get it right when it comes to healthcare system.
So what I know I have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to ask them.
Okay, it's okay.
It's okay. There are a lot of questions that have come into my mind. But now let me ask this. What are the steps that should be taken to make sure that we sustain this formula? Especially in economic growth.
Yeah. I think let me just give maybe one or two maybe solutions that we might think of. When you think of the private sector, I think I have three kind of steps.
Okay.
One is the vision. What vision do we have for this country?
They were just talking about Vision 2030, but we didn't know the Vision 2030. What does it mean? Like,
I know the vision. It was launched by Kibaki in 2008.
Yeah.
And the main objective was to transition Kenya from low income to middle income by 2030.
But is it really happening?
When you check the metrics, there are three metrics that they use. They use the economic growth. The target was from 2008 all the way. Each year, the growth should be 10%.
10%. Okay.
As you speak, on average, it has been 4.5%. So we have track on that. There's the issue of social equity, which said by 2030, I think the target was by 2030, each Kenyan should experience free healthcare and education. What's your take?
So we are going back.
That's one. Would you say it's a success?
No, it's not. It's not.
The other one is about political stability. By the time by 2030,
we should be
Kenya should experience a political environment that fosters economic growth.
Like US, Are we there?
What's the story?
We are not
Those
even...
are the three metrics.
Yeah.
And
the last one?
No, there are three. There are just three. Those were the main metrics that were being used in the Vision 2030. This initiative expires in 2030. So it's 5 years from now.
Yeah. 5 years from now.
What are we doing? We need a new vision. Yeah. And this is why I want to share this idea of this economic development framework. I want, if whatever I'm sharing resonates with Kenyans, we can build a movement to run with this and take back our country and put it on the right trajectory. That's my main theme. Now,
with the Vision 2030, we are only dealing with 5 years, right? Do you think, because according to the way things are, I'm not seeing us achieving any of the three. Do you think we should add more years?
I think the point is we need a new vision.
Yeah.
What we are doing, our police, what are they doing in Haiti? Is that part of the vision? So I don't want to go there, but if what we are seeing is ending to go by, the next 5 years will not change anything. Actually, it's kind of economic, progressive growth, kind of.
I think for us to at least achieve, we need to find ways of depending on ourselves without maybe doing other things, maybe outside our account. Like for instance, you just mentioned that, and let me talk about it. Yeah, I don't want you to. I don't want to talk about it. Some of our policemen, some of our brothers have been killed in Haiti, and the president is not even talking about it. We don't know the way forward. And I think this is one of the things that is really affecting Kenyans. Like most of the families that are their brothers maybe have died. There's a way they're being affected, and they're seeing these counties. This is not where we're supposed to be.
Yes.
Yeah. What are we supposed to do, like, for us to prevent all these things, the sudden deaths, everything that is happening in the country, like generally?
At the end of the day, change will come from Kenyans. If we are looking for change to come from top, I don't think we'll get it based on what we are seeing. It's us.
Yeah, that's true.
It's us.
Yeah.
Who will make the decision? Who will take back our country and create a new vision for our country. We need a vision for this country. What we have done, what we have seen for the last 30 years is not helping the nation. We need a new vision. That's one. Second, we need to move away from this mindset where the public sector is the focus. We need to move from that mindset to private sector mindset, where the economy is driven by the private sector. We need to move away from foreign aid, where without IMF or without World Bank, the country is grounded. We need to focus on the private sector. The other one is we need to use the economic development principles to develop our nation. We need to use economic principles to develop our nation.
Yeah.
What does that mean? We say that for us to get rid of poverty within one generation, you need the economy to grow by 7%. Private sector is the blood of the economy, but it demands three things: capital, labor, and productivity. That's one. The other one is countries that are in agriculture, they usually find themselves in the low income. Countries that are in industries and manufacturing, they're in the middle income category. And countries that are in service industry, they are in the high income category. For these high income nations to become competitive and remain competitive, they take the lead in science and technology, innovation and development, with mathematics being the foundation. The question we need to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do to change the trajectory that we have seen for the last 60 years as a nation? How can we equip ourselves, the labor part of it, with the qualities of their income economies, the qualities of their income, where science, technology, how can we equip ourselves with those skills? Don't forget, the quality, the shape of the private sector is defined by the quality of labor. The quality of labor. If you have low-skilled, employees or workforce, you end up with low skills, low-paying jobs with limited, potential for growth. If your symbol for private sector is a wheelbarrow, what will wheelbarrow give you? Wheelbarrow skills. What can they give you? Low-paid jobs. With limited potential for growth. So the thing is, if it's true, the landscape of the private sector is shaped by the quality of that. If it's true, then the question becomes, how do we design this private sector? How do we equip a child born today with the skills such that by the time they're out of college, by the time they're leaving by the time they're leaving college, they'll join a private sector that hovers, that gives high-paid jobs, as well as guarantees high living standards. How do we do that? That's the question we need to ask as a nation. How do we do that? That question should be our guide, our North Star, our guiding light.
How do we do that?
There are many ways, but I can just offer some, maybe one solution to that. When you talk about the labor issue, education, mathematics, mathematics is an issue. The qualities of the high-income nations is they take the lead in science, technology, research and development, with mathematics being the foundation. That's what we need as the labor force. Mathematics has to be the foundation of economic growth. But now when you look at Kenya, we have seen the means of education announce very interesting approach, strategy, where mathematics will be optional, for those who are graduating from high school. Our students who are graduating from high school, from 15-year-old, will have the option
to do mathematics,
to graduate without
mathematics.
Think of that. The question is,
and then we want our economy to grow.
The question is, what is motivating them to do that? What is motivating them to do that? Think, economic development requires data. And we talked about the report, about the OECD, the Program for International Students Assessment, which reports that 30% don't meet the minimum proficiency level. And already, mathematics is not optional. Does it make sense? you might, let me just digress. You might have maybe heard Donald Trump, president of the US, say that the US is performing terribly in mathematics and science.
Sciences.
He even signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. The order said, I think it said that it will give kids, the children and the parents, freedom to escape a system that is failing. You know, a system that is failing. Where is Donald Trump getting this information to make such drastic measures to dismantle the Department of Education? It's from this data we are talking about. The Program for International Students Assessment, which ranks USA number 37 globally when it comes to mathematics. You see? What is interesting is this report, the way it is prepared, the way it is evaluated, is done on those same students who are graduated from Form 4. Does it make sense?
It makes sense.
The ones who are leaving Form 4, the same students we are telling them to it's optional.
It's optional, yeah.
That report is evaluated on those students. What does that mean for us as a country?
Where?
It's, I think there are many objectives why this thing is being done. But I can tell you this, economic development is not one of them. It's not one of them.
They're not even looking.
It's not about economic development. There might be other motivations, other objectives. I don't know. But from economic development standpoint, economic development is not one of them.
Why?
That's the challenge we have. We need to go back to mathematics.
Well, with all that, and then
I think with time as we proceed, I'll explain more about other solutions. But I think this is the main, because if it's true, the landscape of the private sector is defined by the quality of labor, and education is one of the keys. We can't do away with that. It's a burning issue.
It's a burning issue.
We can't do away with it. Whatever decision, whatever motivation is there, we don't know. But economic development
is not one of them.
It's not one of them.
Well, now, what are the what is the suggestion for the nation? Especially, you can offer to at least one or two actionable ideas that can be taken in order to lay a foundation for a prosperous Kenya.
I think that's what I did actually about the mathematics.
Oh, about the mathematics.
Yeah. That we have to go back to mathematics.
So the main thing, the only foundation, one of the main and the only foundation that we have to let us
education
go back.
Wise, we have to
education wise.
This is time to go back to science congress. You know those
science congresses.
Those events, mathematical competitions. This is time to do that.
By the way,
for us,
they are not nowadays. They're not there.
There's a direct line between those things, and this phasing out of mathematics. We don't know the motivation, but economic development is not one of them. For us to hit 7% per year for 25 years, to get rid of poverty, we have to go back to mathematics. Education is key. That's how developed nations think. We have to think like them.
Don't you before I'll ask you the last question. Do you think we can end up like China? Because I don't know whether that's the idea that they have, that, and that's why they brought the issue of the CBC, whereby if a child maybe reaches some stage, the child, maybe if you realize that a child is a footballer, he goes to play football. Do you think we can, as a nation, will reach that level, like the way China's are? I think that's what is happening in China.
I think I'm a man of faith. I believe everything is possible. But you need the right leadership. With the right mindset, with the leader who understands how all these things connect. We can't reach there when we're facing with mathematics. I think that's legit for far. Right? We have to get a leader who understands the dynamics, all these things that they play together for us. We can even outgrow China. We can join the Botswana is just one step away to join Scandinavian countries to be the class of rich economies. Mauritius is the same. What did they do for them to, and they have taken a span of 25 years to be in that category. What's the secret? Education. Highly skilled people. You equip your classes. There's no escape here. We have to get the right leadership who cares about the quality of the labor. So
it's not about having leader. A leader is about having a leader who understands
how these things come together.
The dynamics.
That's the thing. What are we doing in IT?
That is a personal development.
It pains me when I see I've stayed in Europe, and Kenya has a lot of potential. You could hear, the goodwill from people, those who have visited this country, the experience. There's a lot of goodwill. Even the Kenyans in Europe, the young ones, they see the potential in this country. What we can do, we get our acts together. But, the side of the leaders we have, the kind of... It disappoints. It's very disappointing.
Now that you mentioned Europe, this question I'll ask you last.
Okay.
Let us leave this one. You've lived in Europe and in Sweden, for that matter, for 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. What are the things that maybe when you try to compare the way they're done there and the way we are doing it in Kenya, you find like sometimes you ask yourself, why was I born in Kenya? Like, because you have to reach that point you're asking.
I think I can just explain with, let me give you a context. I think 2 weeks ago, we saw the CS for Finance.
Bandi. Yeah, Bandi.
But that's the name, yeah. He was on Citizen, I don't know which program.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said is, we are spending 960 billion on public sector employment salaries. 960 billion. On public sector employment salaries. In 2021, that amount was 650 billion. In 2021, 4 years ago, 650 billion. That is a change. That is an increase of 40%. Almost 50%. Okay, share with 50%.
Yeah.
50% growth in public employment. When you look at the global public employment trends, the main trends that shape our nations. The World Bank ranks Kenya as one which is leading when it comes to public sector employment within that time frame by 66%. Kenya is leading globally by 66%. Meanwhile, other countries like Sweden, the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway, they experience the least within that time frame. The least change. Finland, I think it was 2%. 2%. Kenya is 66%.
66.
Increase in public
employment. A difference of 64.
Finland is 2% on the same metric. The question is, what does Finland know that seems to escape us? Why are we... What is that escaping us? 66. What does Finland know?
Like 66% we used to pay public.
An increase within 4 years. It's 4 years.
Within 4 years.
That's 50%.
Yeah, that's 50%.
So what does Finland know that seems to escape us? Finland, they understand this one truth about economic development. The public sector does not exist to create jobs.
Yeah.
Does not exist to create jobs. Jobs from politicians, who have been rejected. Public sector does not exist to create jobs. It exists to support the private sector. It exists to support the private sector. Unless we come to terms with that truth and live by that truth, our priorities will always be wrong. That's why within 4 years, your salary is 50%. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what does this support look like from the public sector? I think we talked about it. The government that is supposed to provide public goods and also create conducive environment for the private sector to thrive. Why? Because when a private sector, a thriving private sector attracts investments, the jobs that the Kenyan youth is crying for, those jobs do not come from the public sector. Those jobs come from the private sector, through investments. So the question we need to ask ourselves, how do we make this private sector? How do we create a thriving environment for the private sector in Kenya?
Where?
And I think I'll give you a challenge.
Okay.
As you interview, those who decide to serve this country, the leaders and politicians, put that question across them. How do you plan to ensure that the private sector is thriving? That's the best way to filter, the serious ones from from the crowd.
Your plan.
What is it? 2 questions. How do you make the private sector in Kenya thrive? That's one. Second one, how do you equip the population, the labor force, with the skills that will help them, the kind, I usually say the high income kind of skills, but how do you equip the labor force with the right skills? I think that's everything. Those 2 questions. the way they answer,
Yeah.
you'll understand this is serious or not.
Or the way they'll tackle it.
Yeah. We need those those are the main questions to direct this country in the right way. You need that.
Well, now, as we wind up, I want to ask you this. Now, what is your message to Kenyans, and what message do you have, like, for the people of Kenya, especially the youth?
I think mine is in form of a question. Mine is in form of a question, especially to the Kenyan youth. What options do we have? What choices do we really have? We are going to make some tough choices moving forward. Do we continue down the current path, a path that is clearly taking us to the wilderness? You know, spend the next 40 years wandering in the desert, lost and without hope. That's one option, the easiest option.
That's the easiest.
The path of no action.
Yeah.
That's the easiest option. Or do we unite as one force, and take back our country from those few characters, from those few people, I think, who have taken a vow to, slice up this country, sell off the best parts, and throw the rest into the trash bin. That's the most difficult path, but the only path that takes us closer to the land of our promise. You'll be tested. You'll face challenges and, setbacks. Success will not come easy. Probably get worse before it gets better. But I think it's always good to know this. The situation we find ourselves is not new. Many of our heroes of faith, they have faced the same situations and emerged out as victorious. I think of Joshua. I think you know the story in the scripture. He's the one who took over after Moses.
After Moses had died.
Joshua found himself in a situation. He felt too young, unqualified, not ready to lead the children of Israel.
Can't lead these people.
But the Lord spoke to him, saying, what? Joshua, the place that the sole of your foot shall step upon,
You shall conquer.
I have given you. As I was with Moses,
So
shall I be with you. Be strong and have courage. I think that's my message. That's my prayer to the Kenyan youth in this defining moment. As the Joshua's generation, be strong and have courage.
So we only have two options. We take the short one that will lead us to death, or take the long one that will lead us to Canaan.
Absolutely.
I have nothing to add. After all, guys, that is all we had for today. And until we meet again in the next video, if it is possible, I have been your host, Boniface Owino.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Boniface.
The last statement is up to us to choose.
It's up to us to choose.
If you want to be Joshua, if you want to take the short one.